Welcome to the Good Grind Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator at the University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. What's that falling outside my window? It's not rain, that's for sure. It is leaves. We are starting to lose some leaves. So we're going to talk today about what to do about all these fall leaves that are starting to filter down to the earth here. And you know I'm not doing this by myself. I'm joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Hey, Ken.
Hello, Chris. Yes, we've got a few leaves falling here and there. Not too many, but still no rain. Well, I guess we had a little bit yesterday, Monday, but nothing really worth talking about.
No, it has been depressingly dry right now. I do have some leaves. So our white ash trees that we have in our front yard, they're usually the first ones to turn in the fall. They often will turn this like beautiful kind of purple, maroon to yellow, orange color. It's like the tree just sort of lights on fire or lights up in the fall. It's not really doing that right now. The leaves are just sort of falling while they're green, fallen while they've turned a little brown. I was downtown Quincy last weekend. All of the trees downtown are starting to lose their leaves. They're all planted amongst this, concrete jungle area. They're all scorched, no fall color, but they're all losing their leaves. So the drought is, at least in my neck of the woods, definitely wreaking havoc with our fall leaf color display.
Yeah, in Jacksonville, some of the street trees, particularly maples, are changing, but like in our yard, nothing's really the walnut tree in the neighbor's yard that hangs over into our yard, it's starting to turn a little yellow and drop some leaves. But other than that, not a whole lot of leaf drop yet. But
yeah. Well, in terms of like fall color, there's a couple maps that you can find online. A lot of them I've seen, like I know the Farmer's Almanac. There's one from like the Great Smoky Mountains, fall prediction map. A lot of them are prediction maps based upon sort of previous climate data. There's one called explorefall.com. I'm not sure how accurate these maps are, but it does seem like this particular one is updating it based upon weather data. But it says, at least here for the Explore Fall map, where I'm at in McDonough County, Illinois, we should be at moderate color based upon the weather data. And then using the fall prediction map from like Farmer's Almanac or the Great Smoky Mountains, we should be at kind of patchy color, fall coloration. So we're maybe a step or two away from peak color in a normal year, maybe with normal soil moisture conditions.
yeah, it looks like Jacksonville is in the moderate color, but at least around my house and looking out the window at the extension office, we are not in moderate color right now.
Yeah. It's a lot of green out there. That's what I'll say. A lot of green. So yeah, leaves are falling. And I think this has become like a very seasonal thing. I mean, I think it pops up in the spring, but it really pops up in the fall. What should I do with my fall leaves? And we've actually run across, there has been a study published recently. It came out March 20th, 2025. So, I mean, that's about as recent as you can get when it comes to these types of research. It's in the Journal of the Science of the Total Environment. That's a new journal for me. I've never heard of that one. But it looks like it is published by a couple entomologists out east at...
Is it Maryland? University of Maryland.
Mm-hmm. University of Maryland. And so an entomologist and an ecologist have put this study together, a multi-year study. And if people are interested, I think it's not behind a paywall. If it is, I guess just let us know. I suppose we can get access to you. But the name of it is Removing Autumn Leaves in Residential Yards Reduces the Spring Emergence of Overwintering Insects. And so this question of should we remove the leaves or should we leave them be, oftentimes it is looking at its impact on wildlife, mainly insect overwintering populations, insects interrupting their life cycles, insect population decline. And so that's really that big debate of leave the leaves or not. Um, yeah, this article or this study seems to address that. Um, it looks like they began in about 2020 in terms of some of their initial baseline research and in some of the measurements of like soil moisture and soil temperatures, identifying plot sites. And then in like 2021 up until 23, they did like 2 years worth of data collection in their plots. And then Ken, I guess, is there a good summary, do you think, of this research and how they went about it?
Yeah, so I guess they solicited, I guess, look for people they have would be willing for them to do the study in their yards, and they looked at leaf removal, no leaf removal, and then high maintenance areas. It's like more turf grass where you're, I don't say constantly, but you're mowing and you're actually
Mhm.
doing stuff to the landscape, and then low input like under trees where you may not have a whole lot of grass growing, you're not doing a whole lot of maintenance work there. And I guess it's important to note that none of these yards were using pesticides. So
Mhm.
they're quote unquote organic. Um, so they're trying to kind of eliminate that variable pesticide use and stuff in there. So they're trying to isolate the effect of leaves. So you eliminate pesticide use from there. So that's kind of what they're looking at. And what they found was, um, just look at the highlights here. Uh, Spring emergence of arthropods was down by 17, reduced 17%. So they were looking at butterflies and moths, flies, beetles, parasitic wasps, and spiders were the kind of the groups they're focusing on. Um, so now you have fewer species richness, or like the number of species was reduced, and Lepidoptera, butterflies, and moths was reduced by 40 to 40%, and abundance, or the total number, was reduced by 45%. The kind of the composition or the groups that you found were altered by removing leaves or leaving leaves there. Let's see here. Leaf mining moths and the parasitic wasps that are associated with them. So the wasps that are attacking those leaf mining moths, those which shouldn't be shocking, those numbers are reduced because you're removing those leaves that they're overwintering in. Those were greatly reduced. Um, but regardless of whether it was high maintenance or low maintenance areas, leaving leaves supported those arthropod populations. I think spiders saw a pretty big decline as well in areas where leaves were removed. So kind of across the board, you saw reductions in the numbers when leaves were removed from the landscape.
And in terms of how they collected their insect population, their samples, it looks like they were doing like a 90-day collection in the spring, early summer time period. So everywhere from it looked like April, May, June-ish collection period. And they said that you know, the spring, they were able to collect quite a few insects, but not enough to really warrant them visiting their sample areas that often. They would visit them every 20 days. But then as the weather warmed up and we got into May, they started visiting every 10 days because insect emergence increased as the weather warmed up. It looks like they collected really on that shoulders part of spring and summer. Because insects, they can their life cycles overlap, and you'll have some emerging midsummer, late summer, fall.
Mhm.
There's multiple emergence time periods, but that is sort of that collection period that they utilize there.
Yeah, when they collect 34,000 insects.
Hmm.
So some poor grad student probably had to go through all that and ID that stuff.
That's why grad students, that's why they get paid the big bucks. By big bucks, I mean not hardly anything, if anything at all. So a lot of times they're still paying to go to school there. So yes, the poor grad student. Um, I guess the way these plots look like, there was like 2 meters across, kind of wide, and 1 meter in that sort of across. Um, and then those 2 meters are then divided into one plot uncovered, one plot covered with leaves. They took all the leaves off, they measured and weighed them, and they sifted them all randomly again and put them on one of those 1 meter plots, 1 by 1 meter plots. And yeah, and they set these nets out, and then they collected insects again in the spring months. So, um, and it was probably all grad student work. I guess as we read through this, Ken, I don't know if you had any nitpicks. I will give at least my first one that I looked at. I think this is a good study. I'll say that right off the bat, that I think that definitely a foundation worth building upon. I did read that you mentioned the organic practices, and they called it organic, or sorry, they called it non-chemical fertilizers. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of a fertilizer that's not a chemical, because they all are. And so, yeah, that was an interesting one. I think I understand what they mean. That they're referring to a synthetic fertilizer, perhaps, or maybe something that is not high in like salts, which might impact like soil biology. Um, but that was just right kind of off the bat. I was kind of like, oh, a non-chemical fertilizer. That I've never heard of those before. Well, I have now.
Yeah, I think they're, what was it, the first year they had 20 sites, but they didn't. So with the site, I think the original plan was you had a site, you have both your high and low maintenance areas, no leaves. So you'd have four different um, trials, more or less, that you're doing there. So they had 20 locations. Not all of them wanted to have all of those there. So they may have only done a high maintenance or a low maintenance, not both. And then the second year, they only had 10 sites total. So some people dropped out. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like you said, I think it's a good foundation, but you'd probably be good to go back and have a bigger. So yeah, I don't think you'd find anything different. Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, I think the gist of the study is still like, if you remove the leaves and manage your lawn and as a like a high management, highly manicured style, you're going to have fewer insects. That this just sort of proves that point. Um, but it is a very small sample size and inconsistent over the 2 years. So yeah, we just need replication. We need to take this research and do it again, and do it again, build consensus. That's how science works. Just build that body of data and knowledge.
yeah, I'll do my backyard. Do your
All right,
backyard.
we'll do my backyard. Keep adding to the information, the data here. Yes, um, all self-funded. But yeah, I think at the end though, they do give some recommendations for people. And I think the one was sort of like at the very least, and this is a recommendation that we see a lot, at the very least, in landscapes where you have large shade trees, allow the leaves to fall and leave them in those spots. There is a landscape kind of design sort of style, and I saw this popularized by Heather Holm. She's a popular author, insect expert, um, and it's called soft landings. So essentially, insects, they feed a lot in the canopy of our trees, and then they will often drop to the soil to spend whatever next part of their life cycle in the ground. And when we continually disturb that leaf, that duff layer, or just mowed grass, we are breaking that life cycle process potentially. So, soft landings, I think that's a pretty neat concept. It allows us, maybe gives us permission to create these really large planting beds under our trees, which not only is it good for the insects, it can be good for the trees as well. Turf grass is a huge competitor for tree roots. They occupy a similar soil volume, or turf grass at least has a more fibrous root system, kind of like a mat that has dibs on the water if the grass is more established than the tree. So, yeah, I like that soft landings idea that they give at the end of the paper. Ken, any other takeaways from the article?
Man, no, I think yeah, that's the biggie. Yeah, just be lazy, leave them there. It's not going to hurt. I'd say at the very least, leave them at the base. Even better. I guess. Well, I guess yeah, maybe even better if you actually add some plants into that. Make a
Mhm.
planting bed there. Put some ferns or other shade living or spring ephemerals, all that stuff. Just yeah, increase the diversity you've got in your landscape.
Mhm. Yeah. So, and we're going to talk more about that right now. So, um, I guess people can read that study, that article. If it is a open access research document, we'll leave that link below in the description. If not, I'm happy you can email me. I'm happy to send it to you. Um, so after reviewing that article, what should we be doing with our leaves, Ken? There's things that my neighbors do, um, like blow them out into the road. Is that a good idea?
No, that's probably not a good idea. Those get slippery, if you're riding a motorcycle or something, or
Hmm.
clogging up your storm drains. That's probably one you don't want to do. But yeah, so ideally perfect world, we'd leave them, but obviously people have different goals for their landscapes. If you've got a lot of turf, you can tolerate some leaves on the turf, but if you got too many and you want to have that turf grass, you're going to have to remove them. So, we were talking before, and it was 20% of your lawn.
Hmm.
If that's covered, you're fine. The grass will be okay. You can leave them. You start getting thicker than that, the leaves can start matting, start smothering your grass and stuff. So, I would say there are situations where, yeah, as nice as it would be to leave all the leaves where they fall, there are certain situations where we probably want to look at removing them, just depending on how we're utilizing the landscape. So, I think what a lot of people do is they'll rake them up and haul them off. Or I know here in Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville, will have dates. They'll come through, and if you've got your leaves bag, they'll pick them up for free and haul them off somewhere. I'm not sure where that somewhere is and what they do with them, but um, that's a real popular way uh, to use leaves. Probably the ones we're talking about um, would probably be my least favorite
Hmm.
because you're not getting any benefit from that. You're just raking them up. You're getting rid of them. I guess blowing in the road would probably be least favorite, then raking up.
Hmm.
Um, Another popular one is burning. When I was a kid, we had in our yard, we had probably 6, 7 oak trees, 100+ years old. So we had a lot of leaves. It would be like 3 weekends of raking leaves and then like another month of burning leaves to get rid of them. But we lived out in the country, so to speak, so we could do that. I know here in Jacksonville, you are not allowed to burn leaves within city limits. Um, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
um, you can smell them burning all the time, but technically you can't here in Jackson. I think a lot of municipalities you're not allowed. They don't allow you to burn leaves within city limits. So again, depending on where you're at, that may or may not be feasible. Again, you're not. I mean, other than the enjoyment of building a fire, you're not getting a whole lot of benefit from burning those leaves either, though.
No.
So
Well, the reason like leaf the smoke coming from burning leaves is just dark and nasty. It's really harsh smoke, and it's just a lot of that carbon, that valuable carbon that we could put back into our soils. Instead, you're burning it and sending it up into the sky, breathing it in. So, um, yeah, I don't like it when folks are burning leaves around me. It smells bad.
yes, especially when you have all your windows open.
No, it's fall. Our windows should be flung open and enjoying the beautiful crisp fall air before it gets so cold again we have to close our windows, turn on the heat.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was growing up, we had a lot of trees, a lot of oak, hickory. We had woods all around us, and so there was this one year, my dad came home with this massive trailer, not massive, but probably the size of like a riding lawnmower, and it was a giant vacuum. It was a huge leaf vacuum that you hook up to their mower deck, and it just sucks the leaves up, fills up this big bin that is on there, and you shred up these leaves. And we use the heck out of those shredded leaves. We would use them as mulch in our garden beds, our vegetable garden beds, use them in our landscape beds. It was a really useful thing because what was happening before that is that my sisters and me would go out and hand rake like acres, acres and acres. Um, and so we would just rake and rake and rake. And I still have blisters to this day. Pretty sure I was like 5 years old when I started that. But anyway, Ken, I know that is one thing that I did when we were young. We would take the leaves, shred them up, utilize them as as a mulch. And so that was a really popular thing. I still do that to this day with some leaves. Not all leaves. I guess maybe we'll talk about our own personal strategies in our yards here in a bit, but I do that for some spots.
Yeah, and you know, if you don't have a big lawn vacuum or I mean even a chipper shredder, you know, if you get a garbage can and a weed whacker,
Hmm.
put the leaves in there, put your
Yeah.
weed whacker in there. Make sure you're wearing goggles and stuff because you're gonna get stuff flying everywhere. But that's you know, that's one way. You're not doing large volumes that way. But that is one way you could potentially shred them, run over them with your lawnmower,
Hmm.
uh, but rake them up. Make sure you don't have any like weed seed heads in there. If you have a dog, make sure you pick up first because you don't want to be digging through that and putting that in your garden stuff.
Nope.
You only make that mistake once.
Yeah, you're like, boy, this these leaves are really like a ball of mud. That's not mud. Yeah. Shredding them into your lawn is definitely one that you can that is recommended. It's one I recommend to a lot of people if you do have to do something with the excess leaves that you have on your turf grass. I think it was Michigan State University has shown that shredded leaves in on a lawn is beneficial. It does help improve soil health. It does help improve your lawn's health as well. So there are benefits to that.
Yeah, and if you're going to be shredding leaves, ideally do it when they're dry.
Hmm.
So I mean, this year it doesn't look like that's going to be much of an issue, but there have been years when you know where you're constantly getting rain. It seems like every weekend it's raining when you're doing your lawn work, and when you're trying to shred leaves when they're wet, things just clump and it becomes
Yeah.
a mess, and it's not very easy to shred them when
Hmm.
they're wet. So
Yeah, I remember when I had a very small yard. I mean, it was like the size of three parking spaces, but we had trees in our backyard. We had like two maple trees, and I still had to deal with a lot of leaves that would just blow into the yard. So I had just a leaf blower, but you could set it so that it would suck up the leaves and shred them up. I learned that if you have a plastic impeller, which is the spinning fan thing that does the sucking, it a plastic one, you might get a rock up in there. And if it's a big enough rock, it can bust your plastic impeller. So that's when I switched over to a leaf blower that had a metal impeller. So then it wouldn't shatter into 1,000 pieces if I accidentally sucked up a rock in there when I was shredding leaves.
but yeah, that was exciting.
Yes, it made a really funny noise, and then I thought I was about to explode.
So I guess another option would be if you want to take a little more uh, low maintenance, if you don't want to do the shredding, is just rake them
Mhm.
into other areas of the landscape. Don't rake them and bag them and get rid of them, but landscape beds, um, a corner that you never use, just make a big leaf pile there. You can jump in it year round. Then maybe get a
Mhm.
little wet and slimy over time, but and I guess if you're raking them and you're not shredding them, be a little bit careful about how thick you're doing it because if they're fully, especially some of the bigger leaves, they'll start matting, and that can cause there's water to shed off. So if you are going to do that, you can put some on there, but don't bake, you know, 2 foot deep because it'll mat down much lower, but that could cause some problems for you. So just be smart about that if you're just raking up.
Yeah. Creates more of a barrier than a mulch. If you get a little too thick and just sort of mats down like that, your decomposition might become a little bit more anaerobic than aerobic, so it might be more smelly and slower to decompose. So yeah, just never hurts sometimes. You go in there with a pitchfork or something, maybe loosen that leaf layer up. I recommend that too with wood mulch as well. Like if you have, especially if you're using shredded mulch, you gotta break that layer up because it creates a shell over time.
I say another one I've heard for leaves, people who have roses. If you've got
Hmm.
some that are kind of borderline hardy for where you're at, is using those leaves to insulate plants. And you do those with other plants too. I think roses is the most common one, where you build some kind of cage and you fill that ideally shredded leaves with that. Make sure it's we're down and freezing before we do that, and probably you want to use dry leaves. Obviously, they're going to potentially get wet, but
Hmm.
you just help that insulate that crown of that plant. With mums if you're planting them this time of year. And one of the reasons to tell you, leave that top growth on there so it'll catch leaves and help insulate. So leaves can be used as mulch or kind of protecting the crown of plants too for that kind of marginal hardy plants in our landscapes.
And I would say you could shred them up and you could compost them like an active composter, put them in a compost pile. A lot of people who do produce their own compost really love it when it is fall and the leaves are available because they do have a very good carbon to nitrogen ratio for breaking down, especially if you're going to be mixing other greens in there. You could mix in grass clippings, other vegetable matter, maybe kitchen scraps from some of the produce that you might be cooking with. So they do make a really good mixture for compost, especially if you shred them up, they will break down even faster. And so you could compost them more actively. I do it a little bit more naturally. Also, as you heard, I shred them up. I throw them on the garden beds, and I just sort of let them decompose in place. So I'm just making compost in situ. I think I used that word correctly that I read all the time, the fancy people use. But yes, I think I used it just right.
Yeah, and even when you're putting them on in the garden, you can use them as a mulch or you can incorporate them
Hmm.
into the soil. If you're going to be doing that, do that in the fall, so you do have time for that to break down, so you're not tying up all your nitrogen in the spring when you want to plant. But if you want to get a little more rapid breakdown and I guess organic matter incorporation into your soils, shred them and till them in. Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily a big fan of tilling every year either, but every once in a
Hmm.
while to get that stuff in would be okay, I think.
Yeah. And and if you don't care, folks, we don't care. You could just leave them be. But if there's no HOA breathing down your neck saying you have to do this, and you don't care what your lawn looks like if you kill off large portions because you just leave the leaves on there, that's also an option. So yeah, just as long as you're not breaking the rules, I suppose, where you live, and which would just make it harder for you, not for Ken or me. But yeah, just you can just leave them there, leave them be. So that isn't another option. That's another option.
Yes. So, and we do that in a lot of areas in our area. We do have a few places where we do need to rake, just because it would get too thick to kill the weeds that we call our grass, our turf. But yeah, we usually just leave stuff, and we'll go around. A lot of people around us bag their leaves. We'll go around and collect them, bring them home,
Mhm.
and we'll mulch them. And I've got my strategic leaf reserve in the backyard. It's got piles of bags of leaves and stuff that I can access throughout the year.
That's awesome. I need someone on board in my household to let me do that. So maybe maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll go down the road here to some of my neighbors and say, "Hey, you want to go leaf hunting with me? We'll
Like,
bag us some leaves." Um, so that is your strategy, Ken. You do have to do a little bit of cleanup, but you're also gathering other people's leaves to put in your yard. I like it.
yeah, we put the seats down in the van. My wife usually we'll both go out initially, and then I'll start shredding as she's collecting, and it's really awesome when the people like shred them first because then I don't have to do
Hmm.
anything. And we've got probably what do we have, 4 or 5 plastic garbage cans that the previous owners left behind. We just fill those with shredded leaves, have the kids step in them,
Hmm.
smash it down, so that we'll use some in the fall. We'll pull some out in the spring. We want to mulch stuff, and yep.
I love it. They are a resource. They are a great resource. Not only can overwintering insects use them as part of their life cycle, we can use them also. So yeah, take those bags of leaves, Ken. I love that. They were going to get hauled off somewhere anyway. We don't know what Jacksonville does with their leaves, so all we know they burn them.
I should, I
maybe
should,
maybe they don't do that. I don't know.
I should probably known that. I've lived here long enough.
Yeah, I shouldn't make accusations like that. Um, I guess for the leaf strategy that we have in our yard, because I think I mentioned this before, we have the ranch style house on the east side of the neighborhood, which I like to call the leaf catcher house in the fall because the prevailing wind comes from the west, blows everybody's leaves up against our house. And so I do have to do a lot of leaf management. I have to do a lot of leaf collection and moving around just to prevent leaves from piling against the house, which could offer as a vector to other things that I don't want in the house, like rodents. Um, and so the other thing though is I will take leaves up. I will shred them when I get a lot of them and use them as mulch in certain garden beds that I have. Uh, I have kind of like a woodland garden bed that will get shredded leaves, but also I'll just rake leaves onto it, just get them off of the turf grass and get them into the garden bed. And then of course I have just areas of the yard I just leave them be. And I noticed, Ken, that over the course of the winter, it doesn't matter on the lawn. The leaves just seem to blow off anyway against the house or against
Mm.
into any landscape beds or anything that has standing vegetation. And to me, the wind is just like the water. They both flow. And whenever there's friction, like in this case, vegetation, it slows down the water or it slows down the wind and it drops whatever sediment it might be carrying in the case of water or leaves in the case of the wind. And so I found that even if I decide to leave the leaves on my lawn, they still just blow off anyway over the course of the winter. And they all wind up getting deposited either against the house or within the planting bed. So I just leave all my vegetation standing in my landscape beds and they catch the leaves. And then I have to deal with them in the spring though, because they're so deep. At that point, I have to reduce that amount so I don't kill all my perennials as well. But yeah, that's what I've discovered. That yeah, even when I just leave them on the lawn, they still blow off.
Yeah, I think a lot of our yards, especially our front yard, um, yeah, things just kind of blow away. In the backyard, we don't
Hmm.
have quite as much wind, and we don't really do a good job of like we don't get the leaves spotless. It's just
Yeah.
this is really thick. We're gonna clean it up, and wherever it ends up, it ends up.
Hmm. Yep. Well, Ken, I guess we've shown that there is no end all be all of what to do with leaves. People, you can make your own choices and decisions on what to do. We've talked about all the options that we can come up with. I'm sure there are others that others will use.
Yeah, I guess I mean you can even go the. I'm assuming they still have these. We had them as a kid. You get like the big pumpkin bags that you fill with leaves. So
Yeah.
for your Halloween decorations,
Hmm.
or I wonder if they make turkeys or snowmen or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just keep filling them throughout the year.
Yeah. You need to have fun with fall leaves too. I mean, that is like the quintessential childhood activity. At least it is here in Illinois. That we when the ash trees started dropping just a few leaves, my youngest kid got out the rake and he made a tiny little pile and he said, "Can we jump in this now?" I'm like, "Go for it. It's gonna hurt, but you can jump in that tiny leaf pile that you created." So I will say he is excited for big leaf piles to jump in and do like flips and back somersaults in.
Yeah, I think that is a requirement. If you're raking your leaves, you got to make at least
Yes,
one pile to jump in.
yes, have fun, have fun with them. There's spiders in there. There's all kinds of other critters, and that's fine. They're not going to hurt you. One time came face to face with a hognose snake. Um, I thought that leaf pile was a little bit heavier as I was moving it. It's like, oh yeah, it's because there's a big old snake in there. That should discourage you from doing and having fun with it, though. Cut that part out, Ken. People are scared of snakes, so like me.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of snakes, going back to that the article we were talking about, the insects, that has a carry-on effect. If you have more of those insects, then you have more of the going up the food chain. The birds that are eating the insects, the bats and stuff. So it's not only the insects that are benefiting; it's those higher level organisms that are, and a lot of those are going to be overwintering, like your snakes, your toads, salamanders. Other vertebrates and stuff are going to be overwintering in those leaves too. It's not just insects. You're potentially benefiting by leaving stuff if you decide to go that route.
Yeah. Well, I do encourage folks, read that article. I think there's a lot of that's also stated in that article that we have not touched on today. So read it and let us know what you think. Tell us your personal leaf management strategy at your house.
Yes. And if you live in Jacksonville by me, thank you for bagging your leaves so I can get them.
Well, that was a lot of great information about fall leaves, how they benefit our wildlife, our insects, and then what we can do with the excess fall leaves that maybe we have to get rid of or need to, so that it doesn't smother our turf grass and we don't have to spend our time and money trying to rehabilitate our lawn next year. Well, the Good Growing Podcast was a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by Ken Johnson. And a special thank you to Ken. Thank you so much for hanging out today, talking about our own leaf strategies that we have in our backyards.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully they'll start dropping a little quicker here, so we can go make a pile and jump on it with the kids.
That sounds like fun. And still be able to stand up afterwards and not like be in pain. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the key there. And let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. It will be a garden bite for you, and then it's getting into spooky season. I'm looking forward to the shows we got coming up. Oh, it'll be fun. That's all I'm going to say about that. No teasing, but it will be a good one. So I'm looking forward to it. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you watched us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing.